Let's get it.
Go for it.
Are we live yet?
Yeah, we are. I love when you can't tell when we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
Yeah, we're waiting on you, Brad. Let's go. And he's really delayed.
Oh,
Oh no.
not again. Not again.
Hey, we're back.
Hey, you figured it
Hey,
out.
welcome in. It's College Sportscast. I've tried to play my video and it wants to lag on me for some reason. But I think it played maybe twice.
It did.
So today we have a special show with us. We have a special guest. Today we have Steve Hiegel with us. Hey, Steve.
How are you?
Doing pretty good. So Steve runs justcollegefootball.net and justcollegebasketball.net. A few other things as well. I'll kind of let him talk about all the stuff that he does. Steve, you can take it from here.
Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Just collegebasketball.net and just collegefootball.net for any college basketball, of course, college football fans. One of my main interests is going to games. So I've seen, I think that was 2 games yesterday live. So about 17 games this season, trying to hit all the arenas around the entire country, which is going to take probably 15 to 20 years. But I got to start somewhere. So I try to hit about 25 to 30 games this year and follow, college basketball teams around the country. I follow pretty much all the conferences. I try to cover all the Power 5 and the top tier mid-major conferences. But, happy to be on the show and feel free to talk about anything college basketball or college football related with me.
All right, man. It's really cool for you to be here. We appreciate it. So I also have my regulars on. I've got John Roberts on.
What's up?
I've got Jason Harrison on with me.
What's going on?
And John Hammond, I believe. He's on voice at the bottom. Hammonds, are you here? All right. There he is.
There you go.
There's Hammonds. All right.
Are we?
Or is it
Yep.
Memorex?
Oh my goodness!
So each week, Steve, we kind of come on and just kind of do a week wrap up of all the sports and all the sporting events, that happens within the week. And we do this on Sunday afternoon. This week, I kind of start out. Kansas has had a tough week this week. So, where do you think Kansas falls tomorrow in the polls?
Yeah, I think they're going to fall between 7 and 10, somewhere in there. That Kansas State loss, they could have won that game. They were down in it, most of it, but I didn't see the game yesterday, but apparently I didn't miss much if I was a Kansas fan because they got blown out at Allen Fieldhouse by TCU, who is a very good team, but notwithstanding. But yeah, they got blown out yesterday. So I think somewhere between probably 7 to 10 they'll fall to this week in the poll. Still definitely have the capability of getting back and getting to a number 1 seed. We'll see how the Big 12 conferences. I'd say this year it's the best conference in the country. I mean,
it does kind of look like it might be the best conference in the country right now. I kind of agree with that. Yeah, and yesterday, I mean, they pretty much kind of got manhandled at home at Allen Fieldhouse, which is pretty rare for Kansas. Doesn't happen very often. I think I seen where it was the second worst home loss of the Bill Self era. I think Kentucky was number 1 last year, I think.
Yeah, I can believe that. I mean, I couldn't remember besides the Kentucky game anytime they've gotten beaten that badly at home in the last. Yeah, Bill Self's been there for 15 years now, almost 20 years. So yeah,
right.
I mean, I couldn't remember. I mean, it's even rare that they even lose a home game, even in conference or out of conference. So they probably look back at the records that maybe have 1 home loss each season for the last 15 to 20 years, if that. So yeah, it was very surprising to see the result.
Well, the thing about Kansas is their schedule. They play at Baylor, at Kentucky. I think they play at Iowa State. Then they play Kansas State again, and then they play is it Texas at home? That's brutal.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, you could possibly lose. I'm not saying they'll lose all 4 or the 5 of those games, but there's a possibility they could at least maybe win 2 of those games.
True.
Kansas is hard to understand at times. Like they'll do really good, and then they'll slack off for 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, I've actually been surprised this season. I'll be honest. I've been surprised they've played as well as they have this season. They lost so much from that championship team last year. When they came out this year and were winning, majority of their games at the beginning of the season, I was like, I figured they would slack off at some point. So now it's hitting them. I mean, I thought the best team going into the season in the Big 12 was Baylor. But, they played reasonably well. But Kansas State surprised, everybody by how well they played. And I also didn't think Texas Tech would play as bad. I don't think they're that bad, but they just can't win a game. So,
I think Kansas State is now leading the Big 12. Isn't that right?
They probably are. Yeah, I didn't look at the exact standings, but yeah, I believe they are. Yeah.
Yeah,
I seen that sole position of number 1. Kind of like I'm telling you guys, when you get into conference play, man, everybody got a lot of film on you. Kansas could have easily won that game against Kansas State, but TCU it just look like, man, they're really good. They're tough. They're tougher than what they've shown early because I think they had a lot of injuries, especially when they took that bad loss. But man, coming down the stretch, man, it's going to be a dogfight in that Big 12, man, week in and week out. And I would love to say the SEC is the best conference, but I can't say that. Big 12, man, hey, they have a legitimate, in my opinion, at least 7 teams that could possibly go dancing. If I can say so myself.
Well, there's a statistic from, I believe it was last year, that in the last 20 years, I believe 10 of the 10 Big 12 teams have made the Final Four, if you think back. Baylor's made it. Texas Tech made it when they had Chris Beers as the head coach. Texas made it about 20 years ago when they had Rick Barnes. Of course, Kansas has made it and won the title. West Virginia even made it under Huggins one time about 10 years ago. Who else am I missing? I think the few that haven't made it are like Iowa State, who's always good. I mean, they're really good this year. I'm forgetting about I'm forgetting a team. Kansas State. They haven't made the Final Four, but they made the Elite Eight several years ago when they had Dean Wade and that team then when they lost to, I believe it was Loyola Chicago in that Elite Eight game. So, I mean, it's a great conference. I mean, I'd say this year their first, Big 12's first, SEC second, maybe Big 10 third. I don't know. Big 10 has a lot of teams like that are crunched right in the middle, but other than Purdue, there's not really any very good teams.
Yes.
I mean,
the Big 10, I agree with that. The Big 10 has a bunch of teams that's kind of right in the middle with 3 losses right now. And Purdue's kind of above the rest.
Purdue beat Maryland.
John Roberts?
Yeah, beat Maryland. Yeah. So,
John Roberts, you have any question for Steve about games this week?
Well, not necessarily games this week, but I'm really kind of interested in getting into the bracketology discussion. And so,
a quick question.
Sure.
What happened to Texas Tech? They don't have that good of a defense as they've, had that blueprint the last couple years. They just don't seem like they're meshing well together this year. Do you have any insight on why they're not playing as well together this year?
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like a team like when Chris Beard was the coach, they were running a lot of transfers, and Mark Adams has followed a lot of that same philosophy. And sometimes when you bring a lot of transfers in, there's some years that just don't mesh, and it doesn't fit right, And it's even you see it's not a good example, but Duke this year they bring in the freshmen, and not every year you're going to bring in all the 5-star freshmen like they did when they had Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett, and they're the number 1 team in the country, and they hardly ever lose all season. But I think it's just one of those things that just sometimes it doesn't click, and this year it's not clicking. And I think they're a good team. The conference is so tough. I mean, they probably would have won a few games. They would have definitely won a few games in other conferences, but they can't get over the hump and win any games. I mean, they were winning that Kansas State game yesterday at halftime, and then just fell apart in the second half and lost. So I mean, you're in every game, you're just not winning. So I just think they need to get that one to get them over the hump. So
let's talk about the 3.
I said also.
Let's talk about the 3.
I think they lost it. Go ahead, Brad.
All right, I was just going to say, let's talk about the 3 blue bloods. You was bringing up Duke just a second ago. So you got Kentucky, North Carolina, and Duke. And, they've won 2 or 3 games now, each one of them. Are they riding the ship? Are the 3 blue bloods gonna get it sorted out, you think, by March?
Yeah, I think so. I think all three are going to be in the tournament. And then, like I said, you saw what North Carolina did last year. I wouldn't want to play them in the tournament when they get in. If even they get in all like 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds, or even, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be much higher than that. But I wouldn't want to play any of those teams because they have the talent. If they play well, they're going to be very tough to beat. I mean, a good example of Kentucky, Carolina, a good example was last year. And then Kentucky, the example, I think it was 2013 when they beat Loyola Chicago when they were the number 1 seed, and then they went to the Final 8 or Final 4. And they just kind of had a team that kind of slid through the whole season, and then they got in the tournament, and then boom, So It's like I said, Kentucky's playing better and better. Carolina seems like they're playing better and better. Now Duke and Carolina have the advantage. The ACC is not that strong this year, so you're not.
It's really not.
It'll be interesting. They play each other. I think first time February 5th is Saturday. I believe that's or 4th or 5th, whatever that Saturday is. Carolina and Duke play for the first time in Cameron. So to see how they, they'll probably split the matchups, I would think, but we'll see. That's going to be a big win for either team. It's going to go along with how they can get in the tournament or not. So but the SEC,
Jason,
of course, is very.
You can go ahead and ask your question, man. I was trying to interrupt.
Oh no! I was just going to chime in on the. I think the Reading Texas Tech is struggling. They lost to. I forgot the kid now. I was looking for the name.
That's true.
He lost the kid. It's a Kansas. I can't think of his name.
Oh God,
Terrence.
Yeah, there's a player that they did lose, and I'm trying.
Then he's bringing in the number one.
McCullough.
He lost McCullough.
Went to Kansas.
And then you bring in a big fella that had been hurt all year, who probably ain't in shape. And so, like you said, the chemistry, man. So that's what I was going to attribute Texas Tech woes.
Terrence Shanning Jr. too to Illinois.
True.
So you losing guys.
It's just one of those things where the guy that left, they didn't replace him with as much talent coming in, and then again, and it didn't click. And sometimes I think Mark Adams is a really good coach. So I mean, I think they'll be fine going forward. Last year they lost to Duke in the Sweet 16, so this year they're having a down year. I think they'll be back.
Exactly.
I got a quick bracketology question.
Sure.
I noticed something yesterday. Somebody was talking about underseeded teams, in which we're talking about the Blue Bloods. Say you're a 1 seed and you're sitting there, or you're a 2 seed, you're sitting there, and Kentucky comes across the screen as a 10 or a 7 seed or 8 or 9 seed. You're thinking to yourself, "Oh my goodness, I'm screwed." Especially like the Wichita State year where they was undefeated. They had Kentucky in that 8-9 game, and Wichita State got the shaft. And,
that's the year I was referring to previously. Sorry, I said Loyola Chicago. It was Wichita State. I don't know why I was thinking Loyola Chicago.
It was 2014, I believe.
2014. Yeah, I was thinking Loyola Chicago for some reason, but it was Wichita State, and they were number 1. They were undefeated too, I think, or they lost like 1 game, and
I think they were
in the second game. And that's the same thing. Kind of same thing that happened last year with North Carolina played the 8 seed against Baylor, and I mean Baylor's the number 1 team in the country, and you get to play North Carolina. And granted, I think the game was somewhere like in Dallas, Texas, or somewhere, so it was kind of a close home game for Baylor. But still, you're playing a team like North Carolina that was just playing better and better, and had beaten Duke and Mike Krzyzewski's last game in Cameron. And they beat Baylor during that game. Baylor had come back and then they won overtime. But that's just a tough matchup for a team. Baylor shouldn't have deserved to play North Carolina in the second game. It's not good seeding on the part of the committee, but it is what it is. So this year, Kentucky could be in that exact same spot where they get like the 7 seed and that number 2 team, whoever it is.
Wasn't Baylor the top overall seed or no?
I don't think they were last year. I believe they were in 20. I know they were. No, they weren't in 2021 because that was Gonzaga. Maybe they were last year. I apologize. I can't remember. They were definitely.
I can't remember either.
I can't remember if they were the top overall seed last year. It might have been Kansas. I wouldn't think it was Kansas, but I could be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I think that might be right. Kansas at number 1 overall
last year. Yeah, I think they were. I'm trying to remember who won the Big 12 tournament last year, and I don't believe it was Baylor. I think it was Kansas, but I could.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Kansas did win the Big 12 tournament. So, but I was thinking that Baylor was the number 1 overall seed 1 year here in the last few. I can't remember.
I think they would have been in 2020 when they canceled the tournament. I think they were on.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, but they were having a phenomenal year that year, and then they came back in 2021, and Gonzaga was the overall number 1 because they were undefeated and they were pretty much the second number 1 seed. They beat them in the championship game, but last year, I don't think they were. So
I got.
So
yeah, Gonzaga's number 1 and Baylor was the. Yeah.
I got one more question about the bracketology real quick. A lot of people don't realize this. The Mountain West is such an underrated conference. We probably had Friday night one of the most underrated games in Boise State and New Mexico. I don't think the Mountain West gets a lot of love like it should. You know, Leon Rice is a heck of a coach for Boise State. Then you got Richard Pitino with Jamal Mashburn Jr., Marcus Shaver for Boise State. These are two good teams that I think will most likely end up in the NCAA tournament. What Leon Rice has done for Boise State is impeccable to what he's done for that conference and such. I just want your thoughts on the Mountain West and how they're such an underrated and why nobody gives them the credit they deserve.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a great conference to watch. I'll be honest. I couldn't stay up for that game on Friday night. I fell asleep 5-10 minutes into it. I started at 11 o'clock. I'm on East Coast time. Started at 11 o'clock East Coast time. I couldn't stay awake. I love watching the games in the conference when they're on it. Even if they start 10:30, I can watch them. But it's gotten Mountain West is like in a way like the WCC. It's gotten so much better in the last 3 to 5 years. I mean, Gonzaga's really helped the WCC climb, but Mountain West overall, there's so many good teams. I think they got 5 bids last year, and I could see them getting 5 bids again this year. I mean, there's a lot of good teams in that conference. And some of the venues, like the Pit, I've never seen a game there, but it looks like an incredible place to see a game. Like I said,
it's a tough place to play.
Tough place to play, and an incredible place to see a game it looks as well. But yeah, it's definitely a conference that's on the rise. I mean, it keeps getting better and better. More NBA ready players are coming out of the conference every year, so I can see them getting another handful of bids this year.
I don't know that they match 5, but I certainly see them getting at least 3 or 4 bids. Would be my guess.
You got Diego State, probably the top dog in that conference. Then you got Boise State. You got New Mexico. Then you got Boise State. And then you got a couple of teams like UNLV and Nevada, which Nevada right now is on the bubble. And they've lost a couple of key games recently, so not sure how they're going to fit into the bubble situation. But that's what I was wanting to kind of get into, Brad, and, with the bubble teams. Like, I don't know who's in, who's out right now. Like, you look at Ohio State. I know their metrics are there, but I don't know how you put an Ohio State a team like Ohio State in that lost to Nebraska. Kentucky did the same thing to South Carolina, but at least Kentucky has that elite win at Tennessee to kind of knock it out.
I think Ohio State's got some work to do. The good thing for them, they're going to have several tough games on the docket the rest of January and February, going through the Big Ten. And if they win a lot of those games, that'll put them back up on the positive side of the bubble. As for Kentucky, I think that Tennessee win, when all is said and done, could be the thing that gets them in a road win against a top team that's a 1 or 2 seed as the season plays out. But Kentucky's been playing a lot better lately as well. So, I mean, they looked like they were down and out weeks ago, but now they're right.
They sure did.
Yeah. Everybody want to count to be fired after that one loss. So.
I'm mentioned to Brad once before. Me and him was talking. I said the committee looks at those road wins and those elite wins. They look at them more than they do anything. Like those road top 5 wins, they base them off anything that they look at, and I think that's going to help Kentucky selection Sunday.
Oh, I agree. I mean, last year let's go back to North Carolina. I mean, they were down and dead when they beat Duke at Cameron. They were in. I mean, they even said on TV they're like they don't need to win another game the rest of the season. If they don't, they're in the tournament. I mean, whether they lose the first game or not. So, but then they started gaining momentum. But yeah, that win against the top 10 team on the road got them in. So that's going to do wonders for Kentucky as well. Now, I don't know that if you're more a Kentucky fan and you guys follow the SEC, does Kentucky? I know they lost to Alabama the first time, but do they play them is that at Alabama? And they play them at Rupp later this season?
No, they don't play them twice.
They don't play them twice. Well, maybe they'll get a chance to play them in the SEC tournament. Then that could be another marquee win for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is then they turned around last year and stuck North Carolina in that 8-9 seed that we were talking about, and kind of ruined the whole season for Baylor and a couple other teams as well. So
they did,
right.
Yeah. If you would have given, I could have given you $10 million, or you could have given me $10 million. I never would have predicted St. Peter's to not only beat Kentucky and I don't remember who they beat the second game, and then they beat Purdue in the Sweet 16.
They beat Purdue.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
I can't remember the other ones.
I can't remember who they beat in the round of 32. Murray State.
They ended Murray State, yeah.
Yeah, I remember they upset Kentucky, and then they beat, and I was like, thought to myself, Purdue will beat them up. Purdue will beat them easily, and then the next thing you know, they're playing North Carolina, and of course they ran out of gas. But that was just crazy. I mean,
but that was the Elite Eight.
I know the Elite Eight, and they were 15 seed first.
Right?
Can you imagine this year if Charleston and say I haven't really seen FAU play, but Charleston I have seen play. If they get the right matchups and the right seeding is like a 12-13, I mean Charleston could win 2 or 3 games in the tournament. So
yeah,
I mean,
there's another team that a lot of people are not talking about that is dangerous. As I would say, maybe as I put them as an 11 seed, but I think they'll be higher than that. Is St. Mary's?
Yes.
St. Mary's is playing some incredible basketball right now, and I wouldn't be shocked if St. Mary's won that conference.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. Gonzaga lost for the first time the other night to Loyola Marymount, and the game was at home and snapped their 76-game winning streak. Like I said, that conference before, the conference has gotten so much better in the last 5 years. I mean, it's like almost all the teams now are on a trajectory up. Loyola Marymount beat Gonzaga on the road. San Francisco's been good the last couple of years. I know their coach left last year to go to Florida, Todd Golden, but St. Mary's is good. St. Mary's is good every year, and they've had a really good year this year. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Gonzaga doesn't win the conference regular season or the conference tournament. They'll still, of course, get a top probably 4 or 5 seed in the tournament. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they don't win the conference regular season or tournament this year.
Yeah, with that Gonzaga loss, that Gonzaga home loss, that put Auburn as the longest home win streak now.
How did I know?
It's like 32.
I think it's like 20. It's like 28. It's like 28 now.
How did I know that was
John Roberts is an Auburn fan, by the way.
I graduated from there, so yes.
How did I?
I haven't really watched. I haven't really seen Auburn play this year, and
Okay, so
I know they lost Kessler and Jabari Smith to the pros.
Right.
They've played really well for having what they lost this year, and in the SEC especially.
So they don't really have anybody like one stud guy on the team. So now it's more of a team effort, and they have to have the entire team working, or otherwise it could be all bad real quick. The guard play is starting to come around, and that's what's helping them win now. They've slowly, quietly put together a really nice season. They are 6-1 in conference. Their one loss came to Georgia early when we thought Georgia was actually pretty good. Now Georgia's kind of evened out back at 3-3. So don't know if that's going to look.
That's actually good for Georgia, though.
Yeah.
3-3 in the conference. I mean,
right. Well, yeah, but I mean, but still, with the one loss for Auburn, that it looks worse and worse as Georgia loses, as opposed to. It looked really good when Georgia was winning right after they did that. And, of course, Auburn then went and beat Arkansas, which looked really good until Arkansas couldn't win a game after that.
That was a team that was really high on at the beginning of the season, and they've had some injuries and stuff.
They've had some injuries since then, or right around that time. And so, but I mean, again, there's guys like Jalen Williams, who is starting to become a shooter, and Bruce is really pushing him to be probably a little bit more selfish than he really is, because he's a guy that wants, he's looking for, he's a pass first guy, and he's looking to help the team. But, Bruce really wants him to be selfish and be like, look, you need to take shots, and you need to take them whenever, wherever, early and often. And he's a guy that has really kind of led the team, since then. And you've got your guard play. You've got, Wendell Green and KJ and all them. But again, it really starts with Jalen Williams, and and then being able to get offensive rebounding down low with Janai Broom. And, there's been times where he just has been absent. But then when he does show up, that's when when Auburn has, played well. So, yeah.
Hey, don't forget about the hometown kid from Little Rock, Arkansas, Alan Flanagan. Don't forget
That's right. Alan Flanagan has actually played so much better this year than he did last year or the few years right after the Achilles injury. So he actually is he is actually starting to turn around to being what he was pre-Achilles injury, which is what Auburn was looking for last year and the year before.
True. So, I've seen that young man actually literally grow up, play ball with his uncle. I know his dad. So I've literally seen him grow. I can't believe he's 6'6". So it's just amazing to see his growth. And yeah, but I think he's playing well.
What team on the bubble is going to be on the bubble pretty much the entire time? You got teams like Kentucky, teams that can probably get off the bubble pretty quick. What's a team that's going to hang around there probably the entire time till March?
It's probably going to be one of those lower tier, just Power 5 wise, lower tier Big 12 teams like a West Virginia or Oklahoma. They're kind of gonna, if they can they win one Big 12 game, then they lose two, so they're kind of back on the bubble, then they're off the bubble, they're back and forth because that conference is so tough. They're going to be a tough time putting together any type of winning streak through the rest of the season, week in and week out with the tough games they have to play. So I think like those are two examples. Another team I'd say on the bubble after probably is going to be on the bubble soon if they're not already is Pitt. After they lost yesterday at home to Florida State, that's just a bad loss.
Bad loss.
Yeah, they were playing so well. They beat North Carolina. They beat North Carolina. They beat Virginia. They almost beat Duke at Cameron, and then they lost. And I believe that game against Florida State was at home too, in Pittsburgh. I'm pretty sure. But that's a bad loss to take. I mean, if they're going to be like that, one of the handful of ACC teams that makes a tournament, that's not a team you want to lose to.
That's a good question for you. How many ACC teams do you think actually gets in?
Let me think. I think at the end of the day, you're looking at North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, Clemson, Pitt,
Miami.
Wake Forest, Miami. I'd say 6 probably. One of them at least is going to get eliminated.
See, I'm not even sure that 6 deserve to be in there. I think maybe it should be 5.
Yeah, I think Duke, North Carolina will make it. Of course, Virginia is going to make it. Miami will make it. And then it comes down to probably 2 of 3 making it between Wake, Pitt, and
Clemson.
Well, no, Clemson's playing really well now. They're in first
place. I'll say 5. I'll do 5.
I can see 6 if Wake and Pitt probably one of them will eliminate the other, or vice versa. Syracuse, I don't see it this year.
I don't see Syracuse getting in.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So let's run through the conferences. What about the Big Ten? Because everybody, I seen somebody the other day say the Big Ten's going to get 10 teams in, and you look at their standings. And I'm like, there's not a chance. There's no way.
They're all gonna beat up on each other. I think. Okay, so you eliminate Minnesota, eliminate Nebraska.
Michigan is Michigan going to get in? I don't think so.
They're going to be. I don't think they're going to be borderline. I figure Michigan. You figure Michigan State's going to get in. Purdue's going to get in. Wisconsin will get in. You said Ohio. We talked about
Illinois.
Ohio
State. Maybe.
Illinois it's a very strange team. I mean, they looked. I saw them play Maryland in early December, and they lost the game, but they looked great, and they've started 0-3 in the Big Ten. They've rebounded, but to play better. But I don't know. It's the Big Ten
team that's iffy. Maryland,
yeah, that's another team. There's probably about 5 teams in that conference that go either way, and probably 2 or 3 of them are going to go. I mean, even Northwestern's played well this year, though. They could be a borderline
at times.
Team
Yeah,
at times they played well.
They have.
Rutgers right now would be in for sure.
They would be right now. Yes,
they'd be in. So that's a tough. Yeah. I'd say probably at the end of the day, you're probably looking at 8. But I don't. I mean, I just can't see more than that. I mean, Iowa is another team. There's just so many are clumped together that are kind of all in the same. The problem with that conference is it's a little bit like the Big 12 in the fact that they beat up on each other, but even more in the Big 10. It just seems like it's like it's just more aligned with the Big East where they just beat up on each other night in and night out. But the Big East seems like it has levels. You have the top level, middle level, and bottom level. The Big Ten seems like you have that top level with Purdue, and then you have the middle level with a lot of teams, and then you have a couple at the bottom.
Right.
But
See, here's
I don't know.
Steve. Late in the conference tournaments, a lot of teams, these bid stealers, you're sitting on the bubble, everything's going great, and all of a sudden a team like you said earlier, like a team like Towson, they win. Now you knock a bubble team come out of the tournament.
True.
And this year, I wouldn't say the bubble is really big or little or small, but there's margin for error on some of these bubble teams. And there's some really good teams in these smaller conferences. Do you see maybe 2 or 3 bid stealers in the tournament, in these conference tournaments?
Yeah, there's always going to be a couple bid stealers. I think a conference, I saw a game yesterday live. George Washington played Dayton in D.C., and the A-10 is pretty much probably going to be a 1-bid league, maybe 2. But I think whoever wins that conference tournament will get in. I don't think anybody else will get in besides them but again, if the team that's the best team all season in that conference, and then they falter in the conference tournament, who knows? They might still get the first place team like Dayton, I think was in first or VCU. They would get in, and then the team that won the conference tournament, if somebody went on a run, and then you eliminate. That's what will eliminate teams from the Big Ten. If you get two teams in the Big Ten that are they're right on the bubble there the last weekend of the season, and they lose the first game of their conference tournament, then some team comes out of nowhere and wins the conference tournament, and boom, they're gone. And that's, I think, 7 or 8 from the Big Ten. I think I would be very surprised. Somebody said 10. I'd be very surprised at 10. But I guess anything can happen. So,
Right. When you go around SEC, how many teams do you think they get in right now, looking at it?
Let's see. You got to think. I'm trying to think off the top of my head all teams. Is A&M in? I would say they're kind of borderline. Missouri, I'd say, is in for now, but they seem that they're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, they're going south pretty quickly, it seems like.
Missouri's going south. I'd say now Kentucky's in, Auburn's in, Alabama's in, of course. Florida, Tennessee's in. Florida, I don't know. Florida's they won yesterday. Barely.
Right now, I'm not so sure that Georgia wouldn't be in, but I'm not sure. Even after yesterday losing, sure.
I'd say right now probably SEC. Just the best number I think was probably about 7.
That's where I wanted to go with the SEC. Arkansas has been the biggest disappointment to me.
Yeah,
right.
They've lost 2 star players. One of them, I think, I'm not sure on. Nick Smith. Not sure what the whole situation is on him, but I know Trevon Brazile. He got injured. He made that team click, and it just seems like this Arkansas team just don't have the perimeter shooting that they had last year or the year before. Musselman he's having a time with this group compared to the groups that he's had the last couple of years.
I think his biggest issue right now is that he's relying on a freshman to make shots off the bench.
I was going to say the same thing. Last couple of years, he's relied more on the transfers. This year, he's gotten 3. He had 3 5-star freshmen come in, and he was counting on them more than transfers. He did get a good core of transfers, a group of transfers to come in as well, but he was relying on the freshmen this year more than the transfers for the first time. And Smith was hurt. It just hasn't worked out that way. It's hard, as you see with other teams like Duke. Relying on the freshmen, even if they're 5-stars, is very difficult. You have to have some experienced players come in, even if they're transfers, to help carry the load, especially early in the season. So I think it's unfortunate too, because I think Arkansas could have been a Final Four team this year if they were healthy and everything clicked. They were Final 8 the last 2 years, Elite 8 the last 2 years. So it's not in the cards this year, I don't think. So
right, and they, if they lose too many more, they may struggle to get in. Period.
True. Yeah, they could find themselves on the outside looking in come Selection Sunday if they do, because they look pretty. The last time I really saw them play was when they played the Maui Invitational, but I every time I've noticed recently that they've kind of been on the wrong end of the score column, so they haven't done well in SEC play at all. But I know they have had injuries, and like John said about Brazile, when he got hurt, it's been going downhill from there.
I'll say this: if Vanderbilt finishes, because I'm looking at the standings right now, if Vanderbilt and Missouri are still ahead of Arkansas, they're gonna have to play their win. They're gonna have to win the SEC tournament to get a bid.
Yeah, and you saw what happened last year with Texas A&M. You thought, once they got to the SEC championship game in the tournament, they're in, and then they still didn't get in. So
right.
you never can be 100% sure. It's tough.
And
of course,
I actually think Texas A&M last year probably deserved to be in, but they didn't get it.
And I thought it's tough. You had to win. They had to win. They were in that first game. You had to win 4 games in 4 days. Once you get to that fourth game, if you're playing a high quality opponent, who won the SEC tournament last year? Was it Tennessee? I think it was Tennessee that beat them in the championship.
It was Tennessee. Yeah.
Tennessee,
Yeah, it was.
And once you get to that
Tennessee won.
game,
Tennessee won the regular, and Auburn won the season, the regular season.
Yeah. So once you get to that fourth game of the conference tournament, 4 games in 4 days, they don't have any legs. Even if you have depth, you're just done. You're playing against the top 10.
I wouldn't. Yeah, that's like, you talk about the 4 games in 4 days. It kind of reminds me back to when Georgia during that was it the 08 season when the tornado hit the Georgia Dome and they went.
Oh yeah.
They had to play at Georgia Tech, and that was a fiasco, to be honest. They didn't even know. They didn't even know if they was going to get to play the games or not.
Right.
Yeah, very very difficult to win 4 games in 4 days. It's been done a few times, but not very often. So, I mean, Connecticut won. I think they won 5 that one year when they won the national championship. I think they won 5 in 5 days to win the Big East every day.
Right.
Every game they wanted to get in the tournament because they were like a bubble team, and then they went on a run and won the whole thing. So
right, yeah.
With Walker, but doesn't matter.
I got a quick question for Jason on this, since we're speaking on the whole SEC, the tournaments and stuff. What goes into preparation to go to a SEC tournament and prepare for a game? Like, I've always seen, the regular season's great and all, but there's a bigger deal when you get to that tournament. You know what I mean?
Jason, he was asking you on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Say that again one more time, man.
What I was saying was, everybody loves the regular season. Everybody loves them big matchups. But you get to the SEC tournament, it's like a whole nother game. Like,
no, it is. Man, it's a lot of excitement going on. There's so much going on. Especially, I loved it when it was in the Georgia Dome, preferably because I loved Atlanta. But when you moved it to Nashville, I think it became more and more about the college atmosphere, because Nashville is such a beautiful place to be. But man, it's rough. It's rough because I was telling you guys how it was doing our SEC run my junior year when we had to play against Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky in the championship, and that was just 3 games in 3 days. And so, we was probably playing the 3 better teams at that time that was in the East. So yeah, man, it's very difficult, man, and because everybody's playing for, this could be it. This could be your last college game, or hopefully you get an NIT bid. If you don't get an SEC bid, so you're trying to make it to that last day, the championship day, to ensure that you in the dance, man. So yeah, it's that conference tournament is all or nothing.
Right. Well, so we brought up Gonzaga earlier, and Steve, I wanted to ask you what's going on with Gonzaga. I mean, they I noticed even last night late, and I did not see the final on the game because, like you said, it was happening really late last night, and they were struggling with Pacific last night. At one point in the second half, the game was tied, like 54 all or something like that in the second half.
Yeah.
And of course, they're coming off of a loss.
They came back late and won that game last night against Pacific. I know Loyola Marymount, they lost at home the other night, Thursday night, late in that game.
Right.
They just don't have the talent or the depth they normally have this year. They just really don't. I mean, Drew Timme, getting him back was a huge thing, but people forget how good Chet Holmgren was last year. I mean, he was the number 2 pick in the NBA draft, and he was an excellent player. He helped so much on the inside with Timme, and took away a lot of the other team's top player. He guarded the other team's top player as well, and it allowed him that freedom to do what he needed to do. And Timme's having a great season, but it just the depth, the talent surrounding him is not the same as it usually is. And normally they'd win that conference easily, and this year, as you're seeing, they're having and conference has got much better as well. I'm not trying to knock any teams in the conference because the conference has got much better as well. If anybody saw the early season tournament, the Phil Knight tournament up in Portland, Oregon. Portland, they almost beat North Carolina, and then they beat Villanova or somebody else. Villanova hasn't been as good this year, but they beat a couple of teams, and I was like, I had never seen Portland play before that for years, and I'm like, man, this team is really, really good.
Well,
and this team's in the WCC, and they're playing team in the WCC, so that just shows how much
Right.
good the conference is. But anyway, bottom line is, I just don't think Gonzaga has the talent that they normally have this year, and I would be very surprised if they got even past probably the Sweet 16.
Can I make a comment on the Gonzaga thing?
Sure.
I noticed it. They don't have the guards that they normally have, like with Suggs and those others. And if Julian Strother is not making shots, Gonzaga is not a really good basketball team.
Sure. Yeah.
And they have to depend on Timmy quite a bit. Timmy can only go so far with this team. And the guard play, I feel like I even mentioned it last night. They're going to meet a good team that's guard oriented in the tournament, and I just don't think Gonzaga has enough talent at guard play. They got a couple of guys that are there that are really good, but they don't have enough overall that can withstand 2 or 3 guards. A big power forward to a game, and I just don't think this Gonzaga team is built for a national championship. Now, I will say this: they have the talent to get to the Sweet 16, but I just don't think this team is built to win a national championship.
No,
I think Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is a pretty good team, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because for so long, Gonzaga has been that team on the West Coast. So every time they play a game, it's the other team's chance to get some national notoriety. And so I'm watching the Houston game right now. Temple is 11-9. It's a 2-point game. Any given setting in basketball, you can be beat. You're not going to look good, and you really don't want to be looking your best until mid-February towards the end when you're starting to pick up steam. I think Mark Few, now he has his job cut out from y'all. You guys are so right. He doesn't have as many talented marquee players that we once knew him to have, but I think he has a solid player. When you have somebody like Tim who attracts so much attention, he makes everyone better. But I'm with you. Chet Holman did erase a lot of mistakes last year. And that's one thing Timmy lacks in on the defensive end. Now, he's a juggernaut on the offensive end rather, but on defense, he's tough. But kind of like I'm watching the Houston and Temple game, Gonzaga is everybody, quote-unquote, national champion of the West Coast because they've been running the West Coast for so long. And
20 years.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I hold my opinion on Gonzaga, but I still think they can make a run in March as well.
Yeah, I think they can make a run. I just think you figure last year's team was Holmgren and Timmy, and they got to the Sweet 16. And then the year before that, they had Jalen Suggs. That year, they lost, of course, in the national championship game. I just don't think he has that second player to go along with Timmy this year to get him much past the Sweet 16. I would be surprised if they got past the Sweet 16 this year in 2023 in the tournament. We'll see.
So we have a guest. We have a guest that this is from the chat room. It says, if Kentucky beats Kansas, do y'all think Kentucky's in the tournament? I just wanted to throw it to Steve and let him answer.
Most definitely. If you
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you beat Kentucky and Tennessee in the same season, and them in the top 15, top 2, and you're pretty much. I mean, I know that loss against South Carolina is going to look kind of bleak. But at the same time, you beat 2 top perennial powerhouses that are really good this year in college basketball. It's going to be hard to deny that.
I agree. I think, Kansas will still be in the latter part of the top 10 this week if Kentucky beats them. Now, the game it's at Kentucky, right? At Rupp?
It's at Rupp, yes.
Rupp, yeah. But still, even beating them, Tennessee on the road. And Kentucky's also going to have a good chance for at least 1 or 2 more marquee wins through the SEC schedule they're in the season in the SEC tournament. So, I think that if they win against Kansas, they're definitely in.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. So, with losing this past week twice, I think before the week started, the top 4 teams were pretty much set. With Kansas losing, I mean, who would you put it as the 1 seeds?
Kansas losing. I still think Kansas gets a 1 seed as of now. I think Purdue's got to be one of them because they're most likely going to win the Big Ten conference.
Kansas State.
Yeah,
Alabama.
Kansas
Alabama?
State. Yeah, I think Alabama and Houston's definitely going to be a number one seed because
There you go.
I don't know if they're losing. Are they winning now? I assume they're going to win this game against Temple, but I wasn't watching. But yeah, I think Houston's not going to suffer more than 2 or 3 losses that they had most of the rest of the season. And the only game they lost was to Alabama on a neutral court. Now Alabama's in the top 5. So Houston, I say Houston number 1 seed. Purdue, unless they falter down the stretch, they're going to win the Big Ten. They'll be a number 1 seed. It just be left that whoever wins the Big 12 will be a number 1 seed, whether it happens to be Kansas or Kansas State or somebody else comes on Baylor. I want to say UConn was playing so good, but then they just hit that. They hit a free fall
big. Yeah,
falling off big time. I mean, they look like a legit top 5 team, and they've fallen off in the last couple of weeks.
Did you see the game the other night with UConn? They lost a 17-point second half lead and lost.
They killed Butler.
Yeah.
They did
That's
kill
right.
Butler.
I saw that.
Yeah, they got some work to do now to get back. But they look so good like a month ago. I mean, they won that Phil Knight Invitational tournament up in Oregon, and they were blitzing through the first part
and beat Alabama.
Yeah, beat Alabama up there. The Big East isn't as strong. I mean, but Xavier's good. I mean, there's some good teams. Xavier's a sneaky team. I mean, they could get up on that 2 or 3 line for sure. I mean, they got a really good team this year. I was very impressed seeing them every time I've seen them this year. I mean, I was kind of questioning bringing Sean Miller back, but obviously they did the right thing because he's
I believe it's going to pay off.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another team that people are not talking about that is going to be close to that 2 line is Marquette.
True.
Shot Smart should win Coach of the Year, in my opinion, in the Big East. I mean, what he's done with that group. You got the Jones. Was it the Jones kid? Cam Jones. He's probably one of the better guards in the Big East. Playing at Seton Hall is really hard, and they just went in there and they dominated Seton Hall. And this Marquette team is just—they're the real deal. To me, I think they're in the running for Final Four top. They're that good.
Yeah, I mean, they have a really good team. It's interesting to see how Texas ran Shaka Smart out of town a couple years ago now, and the whole Chris Beard fiasco. Now they're looking for a coach again. They probably wish they had him back. So
they probably do.
Yeah, Marquette's got a really good team. We'll see how they do as the remainder of the Big East season.
I think Providence might have a say-so in the Big East before it's over with.
I think they will as well. I feel bad for Villanova because I think with Justin Moore getting hurt last year, and the Elite Eight against Houston, and then he's still practicing now. I don't know if he's even going to play this year, but they have Whitmore. I saw him play in person about a week ago against Georgetown. Villanova's just doesn't have the talent they normally have. They're kind of like a borderline NCAA tournament team this year, and they always rule the Big East. But Xavier's good. UConn, we'll see, and then of course Marquette. Yeah, I can definitely see Marquette making a run in the tournament as well.
I got a quick question, real quick. It's my last question of the day. College game day is going to Tennessee this week they play Texas, and then they're flipping it, and then they're going to Kentucky and Kansas. They're going to take the bus all the way to Kentucky and do the game day there. What a double dip for that week for next weekend. You get Texas going to Tennessee. You got Kansas going to Kentucky. Who do you think wins those games out of those 2?
So we're talking about, wait, hold on before you answer that. So we're talking about 2 UT teams. So we'll figure out who the real UT team is. And then we have a UKKU.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I got this correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, that's right.
Variations of the same colors. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. If I had to choose, I would think Kansas would have a, rebound and beat Kentucky. I think they're going to be they're looking for revenge from last season, and they also want to get back on the winning track. As for the Texas-Tennessee game, I think Tennessee is going to win. Texas is kind of in a weird spot with it's going to be interesting to see how the season plays out because they know the whole Chris Beard situation really kind of I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Like it just kind of cut their season, made the season go in a different direction. I think they were a Final Four team with them. Now it's
unfortunate for sure.
It is unfortunate, and now you're with the interim coach. that was the assistant coach, and you don't know what the future holds, who's going to be the coach next year. A lot of those guys are transfers anyway. There's some recruits, but yeah, I don't know. I think Texas with Chris Beard could have, with his experience and coaching ability, could have got to the Final Four, but now I'm not as sure. So I would take Tennessee in that game.
Right.
Now, so we did talk about, your 4 number 1 seed.
Uh-oh.
I think he froze.
Yeah, I think he froze up.
Yeah, sorry about that. The of the 4 number 1s that you were talking about, which one were you putting at the number 1 overall?
Number 1 overall. I hate to say, I got to say Houston.
Houston. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, with the one loss being on a neutral court to Bama, I don't know if they're losing this game now. I'm not watching TV against Temple, but
I mean, you can make the case for Alabama though. Look at their quad
win
one
by 5.
They won 5 quad 1 wins. They're probably the best team, and I'm not saying that Houston don't deserve it, but look at the resume Alabama's got.
Yeah, I think they have a great resume.
Purdue's sitting there as well, guys. So
yeah, I think Alabama is very warranted to get it, but I just think when it's all said and done, I think it's going to be Houston, because Alabama's going to suffer a couple losses down the stretch in SEC play. They're not going to be able to keep. I mean, maybe they will. I don't think they will be able to keep winning game after game. They're gonna hit a couple roadblocks in the next month or so before the SEC tournament. Lose a couple games. Maybe SEC is a very difficult place to play in the conference. Same with Purdue where Houston has tough games in the AAC, but there's not as many difficult opponents.
Now, on the same vein, I know that we did cover John and Brad's Kentucky team here. At what point, where would you put Auburn currently?
4 line, probably. I would say
okay.
4 line.
That sounds fair. Yeah.
I'd say in the 4 line. Of course, they have the opportunity to move up.
Correct.
It's just difficult with the SEC because you have so many tough games night in, night out. I mean, there's a couple teams, of course, that are down. I'm surprised. I'm very surprised Ole Miss is as bad as they are. They're bad this year. I mean, they're just It might cost Davis his job. Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen them a couple times and they're just bad. Yeah. I mean, even South Carolina.
Sorry, Jason.
South Carolina, who you thought was not going to be very good, has come up with a couple big wins, and they're they have a new coach. I mean,
right.
I don't know. Ole Miss is just bad this year. Yeah,
throwing some Ole Miss daggers.
Missouri's been the surprise of the conference. I think. I mean, I'm shocked that Missouri is this good. Has played as well. I mean, they've fallen off. I mean, they've suffered a couple losses recently, but they played very well this year. I mean, and when they beat Kentucky in late December, and then they beat, I forget who they beat after that, but they had some big wins. So,
they've had a couple of really good wins at home.
Yeah, I'm for a new coach, and I think they've played above where they
beat Arkansas at home and they beat Kentucky at home.
Yeah, I was forgetting as well. They beat Arkansas. So yeah, Missouri's played much better than I think a lot of people would think they would. I mean, they were like 10-0, and then they played Kansas and they got smoked, and everybody's like, oh, that's the same old Missouri team. But yeah, they've had a much better season, I think, than a lot of people would have expected so far.
Man, Coach Gates has done a great job of trying to come in and trying to change the culture. I think he's like I said on the previous podcast, his biggest hire was key. C.Y. Young out of Florida State. You can see, how much he meant to the Florida State, but how they're playing right now. So I think when you get a top recruiter who's well respected, and I've been knowing C.Y. for a long time, and Ole Miss, it's been a bad year for my brother.
It might be the last season for Kermit Davis.
It probably is.
Watch out for Mississippi State in the next couple of years, though, with the new head coach Chris Jans. It's going to take him some time to get some recruits and some players in. But once that comes together, I mean, they've shown some flashes this year. I think they're going to be tough to beat in the next couple of years.
Now watch this. I'm going to throw a name out that Ole Miss. What? Remember, I said this. It is 3:54.
Okay.
Ole Miss will try to get Rick Pitino. Not for the push mute.
Yeah, I think
okay.
I'm one of the few people probably out there that still thinks Pitino stays at Iona. I just don't know why. He came out with a statement a couple years ago saying, he was tired of the big time jobs and this and that. I can see him leaving now more than ever because I think he's kind of against the whole philosophy of I'm in a one bid conference, and if I don't win that conference tournament, we can't get in the NCAA tournament, which is true. But I see him getting a job up in the tri-state area. Maybe what a perfect fit would be St. John's. New York, he's a New York guy. He coached the Knicks. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, that could be. I mean, I don't know if Mike Anderson will be around depending how they finish out the season.
Georgetown might be open.
Georgetown, yeah, there's another. That's going to be open. Yeah, if that's not open, I don't know what to say.
Georgetown's not going to be open. I'm going to let you know. Georgetown would not be open.
I mean, you don't think it'll be? I mean, if he finishes 2 years with no wins in the Big East, how could you keep him? I mean, no matter how
I don't
much
know.
You know he had a contract extension.
Real quick, can I say something real quick about Georgetown?
Yeah.
I mentioned this yesterday. How do you keep a coach that continues to do this over and over? And which I get it. Patrick Ewing is an alum there.
Yes.
I get that.
Well,
but it's just,
a little bit more than just an alum.
They can't.
Yeah.
I read something that they basically don't want to fire him mid-season. So I would be very surprised, extremely surprised if he made it past April 1st or when I don't know, March 15th, whenever their season actually is going to end because they're not going any postseason.
They'll ask him to resign, and then he will
and
resign, and it'll
be
look.
a buyout. They'll
Yeah.
do a buyout. Give him some money. Thank you for your time. Now the question is Georgetown though is like again, who wants to take that job?
Where do they go from here?
He
Yeah,
doesn't get fired. That's why he doesn't get fired.
Yeah.
That job to me is like skating up a hill. It is that rough. That is a
well, I mean, it's
job.
like where do they go from here? You know,
So they gotta ride it out with Pat. They gotta let him try to, find ways to get people to Georgia because
I don't. You can't bring it. If they do not win a Big East conference game the rest of the season, that would be 2 years defeated in the Big East conference.
Yeah, I can understand that point. You're right.
Too much.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
the first game of the season, and nothing a knock against Coppin State, who's a local Baltimore team. The game was at Georgetown. It was on TV, and Coppin State should have won. They lost in overtime. I mean, and that was the first game. And who have they beaten this season? They have like 5 wins. I couldn't even tell you a team they beat.
Man, it's rough, man. who do you know say, Joe, I want to go to Georgetown now? That's hard. That's a hard deal.
He's actually, in the first couple of years he was there, he did a pretty good job recruiting and got players, but then they all transferred out. So there's something, it's just not working. And they need to, the question is, who do they get? I have no idea who they're going to get.
They had that, what was it, during the COVID season, they had the little run in the Big East tournament where they won it, the whole thing.
That's what got him the extension. Yeah.
That's what got him like the extension, like you said.
Yeah. And they haven't won a Big East game since. I don't even think in the conference tournament.
Hey,
right.
I think it's like 5 wins the whole year this year. 5 or 6 wins. I didn't look at the record. It's not very many wins. They won a couple of conference games.
Speaking of teams that aren't making the tournament this year, one, I live here in Birmingham, so we got UAB here, and we got Andy Kennedy as their head coach. And UAB is moving from the CUSA conference into the All-American or the American Athletic Conference. What do you think about, I guess, that move itself, them moving over there, and then their chances of getting into the tournament in future dates?
Unfortunately, the move is all pretty much, as we know, it's all football driven.
Correct.
The AAC. So I think it's a good move for them in the future of getting into the NCAA tournament. You've seen Houston is,
moving out.
Well, yeah, moving out, but they've done so well. I mean,
right.
I would be very surprised if Houston didn't get to the Final Four this year. I mean, they have I saw them play second game of the season in person when they played in the Veterans Classic at the Naval Academy against St. Joe's, and they destroyed them. And I was like, this is a legit top 10 team, if not top 5 team.
Right.
Sampson's done a great job there, and I think moving to that conference is going to do a great deal for him. Even of course it's a football move, but I think that conference can get 2 or 3 bids every year. Whereas and Conference USA,
it's generally a one bid
conference. More than that is really pushing it. So I think it's a good move for them. Of course, it is a football move, but I think it's definitely a good move for the basketball program. And I like Andy Kennedy. I think he's a good coach. I think he's done well there.
Unfortunately, his shooter has been hurt the last four or so games, Jelly Walker. So it's been rough trying to score points when your top scorer is out.
Teams like that with your top scorer is out. I mean, some teams can overcome that, like Power 5 teams, but a team like that just can't.
Yeah, they've got a big guy down low, Jemison. that just he himself is not going to be the answer, and none of the other guards just are shooting well right now. So they've got to be able to find something out elsewhere until Jelly Walker comes back. But he's trying. Jimison's doing what he can, but he's not able to do everything. So yeah.
All right, so I want to get to the Wooden Award. You are a Wooden voter, and who would you say so far this year? Just kind of give me 4 or 5 names or something of the player that you would think that might be leading that. With that said, last year's winner, did he put his name back on the map with a 37 points, 24 rebound performance against Georgia this week? It's kind of a 2-part question.
I think he did. He's actually looking at the list right now, the 25 midseason watch list. I'd have to say 4 or 5 names. Jalen Wilson from Kansas. I would definitely put him in the top 5. Of course, the Sheway from Kentucky. I don't know. I'd say Mike Miles from TCU. I mean, he's had a great season. They're playing so well. I definitely put him in the top 5. Of course, Zach Edey for Purdue, and kind of I guess if you had to throw maybe like a couple wild cards in there, Terquavion Smith, who got hurt yesterday for NC State. I hope he's okay. He's having a really good season, and just because he's going to possibly break that scoring record is Davis from Detroit Mercy. I mean, I can't imagine he's going to win the award because they're a mid-major and not even doing that well. But I mean, he might break that record. I mean, he's like 300 or 400 points shy, and he's got like 10 or 11 games left, and he scored I think he scored 41 yesterday, and he scored like 40 the day before the weekend.
Right, he had 42. He had 42 last night.
Yeah, so it's like he's just having a crazy run, and I mean, he's still like 400 short, and of course. But Maravich, I mean, you never would think that record broke. Now, granted, Maravich did it in 3 seasons, and he's got 5 because he had a COVID.
Right.
Without a 3-point line.
Yeah, and 3-point line. And no shot clock. Maravich had no shot clock, and he's got a shot clock. But it's just amazing. Yeah. It's still amazing that he break that record. I mean, if he did.
Well, he's 300. As of last night, he's 393 points away.
Okay, so he's less than 400. He's got like probably 12 games left, give or take.
12. Yeah, like somewhere around 12 plus a conference tournament.
So he's got to be hitting 40 or 30, 35 to 40 a night if he's 35, he's got to go into the conference tournament and
I wonder with him. Because I remember he had thought about transferring out this year, and I remember seeing something on Twitter about he had like.
I think he put his name in the portal at one time, I believe.
Yeah, he put his name in the portal, and he said he was down to like 5 teams. I remember.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the team. I know one was like Maryland, and maybe one was Tennessee, and then all of a sudden he went back. And I'm thinking maybe did he go back because he would have a chance to break the record? If he was, one of the top names, he's not getting as many shots as he wants every game. He's getting 10 shots.
The defense against him versus the shot ability. Yeah, the shot ability with the defenses against him, plus playing time because he's going up against several other guys that'll probably be equal or better than him they could afford to sit him for as long as they could. So he would get the opportunities. Yeah, there you go. And so the opportunities just won't be as high if you go somewhere else. But you've got the ability if you stay where you are to do it. So that may have been the sole reason of sticking around.
True. Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that coming. I guess there's another couple. I'm looking back at the list. A couple other wild cards on the list. I think of course Edey has to be up there because Purdue's right there in the top 5, and they're probably going to win the Big this year. I'm just looking at the list. Maybe
does
maybe
Brandon
Baycock from North Carolina?
Does Brandon Miller have a chance?
I think he definitely does have a chance. And you do see freshmen win the awards. I mean, Zion won the award. I think I don't like to say they don't. I think they'd rather give it to a sophomore, junior, senior than a freshman. But you never know. I mean, if Alabama stays up in the top 5 in the country, all season, there's a good chance he can win it. So, it usually plays out through like mid-February to mid-March, kind of see the cream rise to the top, you'll see 2 or 3 guys eliminate everybody else, and one of them will eventually win the award.
So I guess we'll kind of end it on tournament talk. I mean, leading up to the conference tournaments, we'll kind of keep it to the Power 5, Power 6 with the Big East. I mean, what teams are you looking at in each conference as probably the potential leaders, to win the tournament, I guess?
Okay, Big Ten, I think everything goes through Purdue. I think they've shown that they're the best conference by far. Now, granted, they could easily get upset in the conference tournament.
Right.
But I lean toward Purdue in the Big Ten conference. ACC is difficult. I don't know. I mean, I would think that one of the trifecta of Duke, North Carolina, or Virginia would win that conference tournament. Anything can happen. Of course, Clemson's first place in the conference right now, so they're playing really well. I think you could always see Miami come out of the come out of the pack and win the conference tournament as well. Big East, that's a really tough. I mean, you got Marquette's playing well, Xavier, UConn's kind of falling off, but I think there's probably 5 or 6 teams that could win the Big East tournament in the Garden. So I think that's a really tough.
The Mecca of college basketball.
What's that?
I said the Mecca of college basketball. The Garden.
Yeah, the Garden. I think there's 5 or 6 teams that can win that conference tournament. And I could say the same thing about the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12 probably 7 or 8 teams can win that conference tournament. The Big 12 might play out differently too, because some
Big 12 runs through Kansas most of the time.
It does, but I think this year, if some of those
the state of Kansas,
it's going to be Kansas State.
The tournament's always in Kansas City too, I believe, right? Every year, it's always in Kansas City, I believe, in that arena. I think it's always in the same arena, pretty much. Or the ACC and the SEC, the other ones move around. I guess what other? I guess SEC. That's good. I mean,
there's like 3 or 4 teams right there, right?
Yeah, Alabama. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be one of a handful of teams or less in the.
Right now, I'm saying
Alabama. Yeah, I could see Tennessee. Winning that conference tournament as well.
I'll say this about the SEC: you put those teams, on a neutral floor, and Jason can vouch for this one. Vegas or whatever, Catville, Nashville.
Oh, Nashville. Okay.
What do they call it, Brad?
Catsville. Hey, because Kentucky do show up down there in droves.
Oh yeah.
They do.
Shows up
Catsville.
Mm-hmm.
No, they call it something else. I think it's some kind of name that everybody call it because for the fans.
I don't know. I can't think of it right now, Hammonds.
I'm off track, but the fans make a difference in the conference tournaments. I don't care what anybody says. It changes the atmosphere and whatnot.
I agree. Yeah. Certain teams are going to have better turnouts than other ones, and Kentucky will have the biggest turnout of them all. I guess the
Kentucky
final.
usually.
Go ahead.
Because I was watching. Was it a conference tournament a couple years back, and the whole area was blue, and Tennessee only had just a little sideline of orange. It was when Kentucky beat them for the championship, and it was unreal how many Kentucky fans was in that building, man.
I can believe it.
Dick Vitale hear self-talk because they were so loud.
What about the Pac-12, man? I'm thinking
Pac-12,
Arizona and UCLA, they might be able to sneak up on some people on neutral sites.
Yeah.
Get out there.
Arizona State might have an outside shot.
Yeah, Arizona State could have an outside shot. You got UCLA and Arizona. USC's always got a solid team. Oregon could be a sleeper. Other than that, I don't really see anybody else in that conference doing anything. I think it's going to come down to those 3 or 4 teams. Arizona beat UCLA yesterday. It was their first loss in the conference. UCLA's first loss in the conference. So
right.
Arizona State really played really well the last 2 games. They've kind of been here and there, and yesterday wasn't so much UCLA losing. It was just they went ice cold. They couldn't hit anything.
True.
All right, Steve, we appreciate you being on with us. I do want to end this with one thing, though. So last night, Jalen Hurts won an NFL playoff game. And I'm going to throw this stat out at everybody, okay? So Jalen Hurts last night, when he won the NFL playoff game, was the first former starting quarterback from Alabama that has won an NFL playoff game in 40 years since 1983.
That makes sense. Yes.
Is that not an astonishing fact?
Well, yeah. But you got to think about it that they have never played in an offense where the quarterback was the focus until you got to Jalen, because once you got to Jalen, then I mean, even right before Jalen, when you had not McElroy, but AJ McCarron. I mean, he was kind of right at the beginning, but with Jalen was the first one, and then you went into
what you say.
To
the fact that Alabama's not had a starting quarterback for 40 years to win an NFL playoff game, it's just astonishing to me. I'm talking about Alabama here.
I think you might have it. I think you might have that number quadruple in the next 5 years, though, because now you got so many quarterbacks coming in. Look at
you got Tua Tua's in the league. You got Mac Jones in the league.
Bryce Young's in the league.
Bryce Young's about to be in the league.
Yeah.
You got
Bryce Young's going to be in the.
That number could quadruple in the next 4 to 5 years, because I think
it was somebody in 1983, and I didn't even recognize the guy's name. I have no idea who he was. It was 1983.
I was thinking it was going to be somebody else.
Speaking of which, Temple just went on the road and beat Houston just now.
Are you serious?
Hey, they could have tied. They could have won a game on a. That was a hell of a play he drew up. Man, Houston goes down.
Yeah.
Well, John Chaney smiling somewhere.
Yeah, I figured Houston probably would slip up at least once, maybe twice in the AAC. I think they're still. I think at the end of the day, they're still going to play Memphis, of course, twice. But I think at the end of the day, they're probably still going to have a number 1 seed.
Temple is a team that might get in now.
Yeah, that could possibly.
Days might not know who I was talking about, but John Chaney smiling somewhere.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. I mean, he was. I'll never forget that whole fiasco with Calipari. What was that 25?
No, me either.
That was kind of fighting.
Kill you. He said, "I kill you right."
Yeah,
right in
the only time I have been nervous to play a basketball game was my first road game at the University of Temple. I walked out of that locker room and I kept watching them come out. I was like, man, they look like action figures coming out the locker room. So this is Temple's first time being the number 1 since 2000. So John Chaney had to be there.
Oh yeah, he was there.
Yeah,
I think he was there until like 2006 or something.
Yeah.
So you're right, Brad. He's somewhere smiling.
I'm telling you, he's somewhere smiling. He was a Temple man.
He was.
Through and through.
Yeah. All right, Steve, we really appreciate you being on with us. We've taken you away from life for a little bit, for an hour and 15 minutes here, so we don't want to take up any more of your time. But
happy to come on.
We do appreciate you being on. I think you have told me that you'll come back on a time or two, while this. So we will we'll try to get that scheduled and try to get you on maybe around a week or two before the conference tournaments or something like that.
Sure, that's fine.
And try to get you on. So we appreciate it. It's been fun. We all enjoyed talking basketball, and we'll get you on the football season for next year too or something. I know you do stuff with with football as well. So
yeah, I know the SEC. You guys are SEC people. That's SEC rules football. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens once. Did they ever decide Texas and Oklahoma? They're coming in next year.
I think it's 2024.
Well, hold on. They've hired a lawyer, and that lawyer, they've hired a lawyer. There's been a lot of discussion, really, as of late. So there's a possibility that there is an early exit.
Well, I think
it
wouldn't surprise me because the Big 12 is getting the new teams next year. I'm starting this fall. So they're going to be coming in.
So I think what they're possibly.
They got to make the schedule probably in the next couple months, pretty soon.
Well, they have to have the schedule by February. I think it's February 1 is when that schedule's got to be announced, because they've moved the announcement of the schedule 3 times already. back. And I think the absolute drop dead time is February 1. So that's what, about a week and a half, 2 weeks from now. So they're going to, there should be an announcement fairly soon about it. This is stuff that I've heard over the last few days with this discussion. So it is coming soon, and most likely there's a possibility that that they have an early exit. But the trade-off might be so that some of the money that they pay out or whatever is that maybe during the next several years that they're out of conference game, that they go visit a Big 12 school.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that they play a Big 12 school as they're out of conference.
Them exiting early. Originally, they were supposed to join the SEC till 2025. Correct. But I'm pretty sure that it's going to wind up being 2024.
And again, it could be as early as
next year.
But see, if they do it next year, then that's just they want to have their pod system or whatever system the SEC wants to do, and so I think they've already announced their schedules. I think so.
They have for 2023.
We'll have to see.
Yeah.
I still think Texas. I mean, I don't know about Texas, but I still think Oklahoma just do a non-conference game every year against Oklahoma State. Play them in the first month.
And the other thing to pacify the TV partners, because again, who they hired is a lawyer who's a negotiator, is that when they play these Big 12 schools, this would be a Fox game, so that Fox gets their money as well.
That makes sense. They get their money. That makes sense.
That was the other part of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Well, Steve, like I said, we appreciate you being on with us, man.
Thanks again for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
All right.
Have a great week.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.
All right. So, guys, we really appreciate. I hope you guys enjoyed having Steve Hiegel on with us today. He's really immersed with college football and college basketball. He does a lot with it. He actually does his own shows and his own podcast stuff along with the justcollegefootball.net, justcollegebasketball.net. He actually has a jusussoccer.net. He does quite a few things. He's a John Wooden Award voter, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask him about the Player of the Year. He actually gets to vote for that, so it's a big deal, and we may be able to get him a couple more times or a few more times. He said he'd come on anytime, so have him on kind of as a recurring guest a little bit over the next few months as well. So. Before we get off the show, I do want to talk about our Home for Our Troops. This is our nonprofit 2023 for the fanboys. It is for veterans, and most of them are wounded vets or injured vets, and they are building homes for these people. You can give money to them, and at 90 cents of every dollar goes to build homes for the wounded vets. They are rebuilding lives for our vets, and they can build these homes at anywhere. So if they're from Tennessee and they want to move to Florida, they'll build a home in Florida. And it's at www.hfotusa.org. All right, guys, is there anything else you want to chime in? Are we good for the evening?
I'm good.
Let's see what these Cowboys gonna do. Look, I can't wait. I cannot wait. What are these Cowboys and 49ers?
Before we get off there, what's the Bengals and
24-10 right now? 24-10 Bengals.
Going to the
24-10 Bengals. All right. Yep. All right, so we appreciate you guys being on with us. We will, on Tuesday, we will have our mock draft YouTube guy on with us, and we'll be doing a 2-round NFL mock draft with him, and it's going to be a side-by-side show with his channel, so he can come on and he has a whole thing that comes up on the screen if we can get it all to work, and he will actually do a mock draft, and you can see the picks and everything come in, and it's going to be pretty exciting. I'm excited for it. We're going to talk about the players that go in the NFL draft and the college kids and where they come from and which team has the most, what conference may have the most out of his mock draft and stuff like that. So y'all join us for Tuesday at 8 Central, 9 Eastern, and we're going to have our very first volume of NFL mock draft. We're going to do one of these a month until the NFL draft in April. So each one will be towards the end of the month. So we're excited about doing that. And until then, we will see you guys on Tuesday for our mock draft. Y'all have a good night.
See you.